listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. In the very first episode of this podcast, The Tom Daniel Show, I made a bold claim right off the bat that American music is Southern music. Now, that was episode 1, way back on April 1st, 2025. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Almost all of the iconic genres of American music originated in the South. Not 4 or 5 genres, but almost all of them. So I want to ask a question now, and I already know some of you are not going to like the answer. Why doesn't the South get credit for American music? Go ahead and sit with that one for a second. Because here's what happens every single time somebody traces American music back to where it actually started. Blues, jazz, country, bluegrass, gospel, rock and roll, soul. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You follow the thread back far enough and you end up in the same place over and over and over again. The South, the Deep South, Dixie, down here. Whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's the Mississippi Delta, New Orleans, Appalachia, the Ozarks, Memphis, Nashville, Tobacco Road, the church pews, the low country, the coal mines, the bluegrass, the corrals, the oil fields, the cotton fields, the swamps, all of it. Now, I want to be clear about something because I don't want this episode to just sound like a bunch of Southern chest thumping. This is not me bragging. This is just plain music history. It's about as controversial as saying water is wet. And yet, the South gets remarkably little cultural credit for what might be its single greatest gift to human civilization. No, check that. Not might be, is. So today, I want to actually answer that question. Why doesn't the South get the credit? And fair warning, the answer's not just, Yankees are mean folks. No, it's about power. It's about money. It's about race. It's about northern condescension. And this is the part that's going to sting a little bit. It's about Southerners, too. So let's get into it. First, the victors write the history. Now, you know how the saying goes, history's written by the winners. Well, the Civil War didn't just settle politics and land and money. It settled who got to hold the pen. For generations after Reconstruction, the people deciding what got celebrated and what got remembered were, almost without exception, Northern. The universities, the publishing houses, the big newspapers, eventually the recording industry itself in its earliest days. All of it sitting up in the Northeast and the Midwest, telling America's story from where they sat. And meanwhile, the South was politically flattened and economically broke. We didn't have the printing presses. We didn't have the professorships. Oh, we had the music. We just didn't have the megaphone. And when Southern music did get noticed, well, it got a label slapped on it. Folk, primitive, regional, local. Now, here's how that worked in practice. A composer in Boston writing for a symphony hall, well, that guy was a serious artist. But a fiddler in the Appalachian Mountains who could outplay him blindfolded, well, that guy was just local color. I want you to sit with that phrase for a second, local color, like the man's genius was some kind of a paint swatch. That bias didn't go away after one generation. It's still doing business today. Turn on the news, watch how fast a story about the South slides into politics or poverty or an accent somebody's making fun of or a war that ended 160 years ago. It's a lot harder to call a region a cultural powerhouse when you spend 100 years training people to picture it as a punchline first. Now, I'm not handing you some kind of conspiracy theory. Nobody in a smoky room in New York sat down and voted to erase the South. It's simpler than that, and honestly a lot more depressing. Cultural credit just flows to whoever controls the documentation and the distribution. I mean, that's it. That's the whole mechanism. The South had the music, the North had the microphone. And the second part, the birth certificate stayed behind. Now here's where it gets personal, because this next part isn't really about institutions anymore. It's just about plain old theft. Picture a farmer in Alabama, a church pianist in Georgia, a fiddler down in Louisiana, a guitar player in Mississippi. Any one of them could create something that would reshape American sound forever. And they did. But the record labels weren't there. The magazines weren't there. The radio networks weren't there. Later, television wasn't there either. So somebody else told their story. And they usually left themselves holding the copyright. Blues came from the Mississippi Delta, moved to Chicago, and Chicago somehow got the credit for it. Jazz came from the French Quarter, New Orleans, found its biggest audience in New York, and New York got the credit. The record producers rolled in with their tape machines. The Great Migration carried black Southern musicians north, and the cities on the receiving end, the ones that embraced the music, packaged it, and sold it, well, they walked away holding the trophy. Chess Records in Chicago, Motown in Detroit, the Brill Building in New York. Now look, those were real institutions doing real work. I'm not here to take that away from them. But somewhere in that transaction, something pretty significant got lost. Or should I say, it got left behind. The music packed its bags and moved to the big city, but the birth certificate stayed back home on the kitchen table. And nobody up north was in any particular hurry to go looking for it. I mean, why would they be? The music was already theirs, already profitable, already prestigious. The actual Southern origin story was just a kind of an inconvenient footnote, a complicated backstory that got in the way of a much tidier narrative. Sophisticated northern cities were necessary to come rescue raw Southern talent from the wilderness. The Northerners had to save us from ourselves. The third thing, the racial accounting. Now, we get to the part of this story where things get complicated in a way that, frankly, didn't do anybody any favors. Race made this whole reckoning messy. Now, here's the bind a lot of well-meaning Northerners found themselves in. They genuinely loved Southern music. They loved the blues, loved gospel, loved what was coming out of the Mississippi Delta. But the South was also slavery, Jim Crow, and giving any credit to the South felt to a lot of Northern progressives like handing out some kind of moral pass. Like you couldn't celebrate the genius of Delta blues without somehow excusing the conditions that produced it. And that's a false choice. It always was. But it was a powerfully felt one, and it did real damage. The result was kind of a cultural laundering. The music got claimed by wherever it landed, not by wherever it was born. Southern black culture in particular got written out of its own story, even while it was being celebrated in the abstract. The music wasn't Southern anymore. It was now American. Its birthplace became unspeakable. And it wasn't just credit that got stolen. Black Southern musicians had their songs re-recorded, underpaid, and in plenty of documented cases just flat out stolen. Blues, gospel, rhythm and blues, early rock and roll, soul, foundational American art forms, and the people who created them were routinely denied the wealth and the recognition that should have come with it. Go look at the copyright lawsuits. I mean, they're stacked deep with cases of white Northerners claiming legal ownership of music written by black Southerners who had no real path to fight back. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show, and we'll be right back.
What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for?
Welcome back to the Tom Daniel Show, and before we go any further, I need a word here with Mary Mac, because apparently somebody up in Chicago heard our theme song this week and tried to copyright it under their own name. Mary Mac had to pull out the original sheet music and physically point at it. That's the kind of week it's been around here, folks. Mary Mac is the world's most perfect band, and apparently so is our legal department. All right, we were just talking about how the South got robbed. Now, I got to tell you, the part that's harder to say, because the South didn't just get robbed, the South also helped rob itself. Part 4, the complicity of Southerners. Now, here's the part Southerners need to hear from inside our own family, so to speak. Y'all, we did this to ourselves. For generations, way too many white Southerners built their whole sense of heritage around one 4-year stretch in one lost war, 1861 to 1865. Now, I get why. I mean, losing is humiliating, and humiliated people go looking for something to defend. That's just human nature. But it was also one of the worst allocations of cultural capital in American history. I mean, think about it this way. If you lead with Bull Run, then you're handing your critics exactly the argument they were hoping that you'd make. And you're burying the one argument they can't touch. The treasure was sitting right there the whole time. We had the most original, most influential, most genuinely American art form the world has ever produced. And too many folks were looking the other way, nursing an entirely different grievance. There's a second piece to this too, and it's a little more forgivable, but still costs us. A lot of Southerners just plain out took the music for granted. I mean, why wouldn't they? They grew up inside it. They were surrounded by it. Church singing on Sunday, family picking on the porch on Saturday night, dance music, local legends, all of it. There. Ordinary, like wallpaper. That's not breathtakingly brilliant music. That's just Thursday. What the rest of the country eventually recognized as miraculous, the people who actually had it just treated it like the weather. And that's the cruel little twist in this whole story. The very ordinariness that proved this was a living, breathing, fully integrated musical culture, not a museum piece, but something people actually lived inside, is exactly what made it invisible to the people who owned it. Now, there's a long-running argument, one I happen to agree with, that the South is a distinct civilization worth defending. Fine, I'm on board. But if that's true, the defense needs to start somewhere. And it should start with the one thing that is genuinely, completely indefensible from the other side. Not the military record, not the politics. I mean, you can argue those all day and go in circles. I'm talking about the artistic legacy. Nobody, and I mean nobody, seriously disputes where American music comes from. So Southerners ought to be making that argument as loudly as possible, constantly, without a hint of apology. We ought to be throwing that in people's faces every chance we get. Somewhere out there right now, somebody's asking, why does that Daniel guy keep going on and on about Southern music? And I'll tell you why. Because when it comes to music, the South is undefeated. And undefeated people don't have to whisper. The fifth part of this, the condescension that called itself kindness. Now, here's a piece of this that doesn't get talked about enough, and it's a little different from plain old racism or plain old rivalry. It's something quieter, something that could look from the outside like it was almost being nice. For a long, long time, the North's default basic operating assumption about the South was this: backwards, uneducated, illiterate. Not evil, just simple. And once you've decided a whole region is simple, you got a real problem crediting anything that comes out as serious art. Now, I want to be careful here because it'd be easy to stand up and say the North loathed us, hated Southern culture, hated Southern people, wanted to erase us. Now, look, I get why that story's tempting. It's got a villain right there in it. But loathe is a specific word, and it implies a specific thing. Loathing means intent. It means somebody sat down, looked at the South, and decided to hate it on purpose. And near as I could tell, that's not really what happened here, or at least it's not the main story. What happened is quieter, lazier, and in some ways much worse, because nobody ever had to decide anything at all. Because plenty of the Northerners who came down here loved this music. I mean, genuinely loved it. The folklorists with their recording equipment, the scouts driving down from the labels, the early jazz critics up in New York, they weren't sneering at Delta blues, they were falling in love with it. But listen to how they talked about what they loved. Authentic, untutored, primitive genius. Every one of those words is a compliment wearing a mask. Every one of them says the same thing underneath. Oh, this is remarkable for people like that. That's not hatred, y'all. That's not loathing. That's something slipperier. That's condescension, calling itself kindness. And it's a whole lot harder to fight than an enemy, because you can't exactly get mad at somebody for liking you the wrong way. So no, I don't think the North sat around loathing the South. I think it's simpler and sadder than that. I think it just never occurred to enough people that backwards and brilliant could live in the same zip code. And once that's your starting assumption, you don't have to erase the music on purpose. You just have to, file it under the wrong heading. Sixth, the oral tradition and its costs. There's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's got nothing to do with malice or politics at all. It's just plain out structural. The Southern musical tradition was oral. It was participatory. It lived on front porches, in juke joints, in church services, in work songs out in the fields. It passed from hand to hand, voice to voice. It was a living practice. And living practices, by their very nature, resist getting written down. But here's the thing about modern cultural credit. It flows to whoever wrote things down. Whoever filed the copyright and signed the contract. Whoever built the institution and told their own story in print. The Southern tradition was never organized around any of that. The music was everywhere. The paperwork was nowhere. And by the time the recording industry finally showed up to capture what it could, the rule book for who gets remembered for what had already been written by people who weren't even there when it was created. Now, I'm not saying that excuses anything that happened next. It's just an honest diagnosis. The oral tradition gave us extraordinary art. It also left that art extraordinarily exposed to theft, to appropriation, to misattribution, to just plain out thievery, and to just plain being forgotten. So let's bring this home. American music is Southern music. Blues, ragtime, boogie woogie, rumba boogie, jazz, Dixieland, swing, Appalachian, coal mining, country, honky-tonk, outlaw country, rockabilly, rock and roll, bluegrass, western swing, sacred harp, gullah, spirituals, string band, Piedmont blues, sacred steel, jug band, jump blues, rhythm and blues, gospel, barbershop, soul, funk, indie soul, dirty south, trap, ATL, chopped and screwed, crunk, bounce, Carolina shag, swamp rock, southern rock, Chicano rock, death metal, hick hop, parrot head, Tejano, Creole, Cajun, Zydeco. Wow, run the genealogy on any of them, and it goes straight back to the South over and over until it practically gets monotonous. That is the Southern contribution to world civilization, and nothing else any American region has produced comes close to matching it for lasting global influence. Is there a bigger and more important cultural export from America than blues, jazz, rock, country, gospel? take the South out of American music and ask yourself what's left. I mean, go on, try to picture it. Whatever's left is nothing. Less distinctive, less influential, honestly. At best, you're looking with Europe light. That's not me cheerleading. That's just history doing its job. So here's the blunt truth, and the one I want you to carry out of here today. America wants the product without honoring the source. America loves Southern music while it's still out there mocking Southern people. And the single most important thing I want you to remember is this: the music is the whole argument. It's been sitting there waiting to be claimed the whole time. The South let this argument go unmade for too long, too busy fighting battles it couldn't win and nursing grievances it was never going to resolve. But the cultural case? Oh, that's a different animal entirely. That's not a matter of opinion or perspective or which side of the aisle you're sitting on. That's just plain old history. So Southerners ought to be making that point at every opportunity, not defensively, not as some kind of comeback to a criticism, but proudly, specifically lead with that, with the confidence of people who know exactly, precisely what we gave the world. And here's the thing about a fight when the other side can't even swing back. It's not really picking a fight at all, is it? No brag, just fact. Keep listening, keep learning.
Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show. Take a break from your usual routine and tune in to the Tom Daniel Show. You'll discover the world of melodies and stories that you might not know. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniel Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniel Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniel Show.